So I'd like to get to know who you are before we get started. So find your chat box that should be enabled. This is one of my first webinar format webinars. We usually use the meeting, so I'm still trying to get accustomed to the different features that Zoom provides through webinar rather than meeting. But anyway, you should be able to use your chat box. Find that and tell us what role you play in transition to adulthood for a person with a disability. Are you a self-advocate? Are you an adult with a disability? Are you a parent? Are you an educator, a support worker, another kind of professional? Let us know why this topic of introducing work to people with disabilities is important to you. Okay, Claire says she is a parent, caregiver, and a professional because she leads a nonprofit. We have another parent of a 14-year-old young man with autism. I'm also a parent and a professional. Sometimes we wear, different hats. So we always love having parents on our webinars. Thank you so much for joining us today. Professionals are always welcome as well, but it's important though for all of us who have some kind of a vested interest in people with disabilities, young people, youth, adult, young adults with disabilities. It's important for us to learn about the things that are important to them when they're getting ready to transition to adulthood. So we have a student educator. Thank you so much for being here, and an advocate, parent of a 17-year-old with autism. My son also has autism and multiple medical needs, so he was classified in school as having multiple disabilities because of a lot of medical issues that he has. But our learning goals for today, we're going to introduce work to youth with disabilities and their families. Sometimes, for some of us, this concept may be new because you may not have been thinking along those lines, but now you're realizing your kid's going to grow up and it's going to happen probably sooner than you think or want it to. And so you need to get some things in place. Many families or caregivers of youth with disabilities are not even aware of skills that youth and young adults need in order to be successfully employed. And many are not familiar with the laws that are available to ensure that youth's rights are protected. So today's presentation examines the role that families and educators play in supporting youth with disabilities to acquire those career readiness skills. Employment for youth and young adults with disabilities is impacted by a lack of skills necessary for successful employment. Often we call those soft skills. Those are skills that are needed to successfully navigate the work environment, look for a job, to get a job, and to keep the job. So these are the things that we'll be looking at today. Challenges that youth with disabilities may encounter in the workplace, reasons why work is important, reasons employers should hire people with disabilities, and you may find some good advocacy tips here, parents, by the way. We'll look at strategies to prepare youth to enter the workforce, and then tips to prepare your young person for employment, and then the critical role that families and professionals can play to support youth and young adults with disabilities in learning work and career readiness skills for successful employment. Before we go too far, I want to talk about the acronyms that you may see. I don't think there are too many in this, but RSA, as I've already mentioned, is the Rehabilitation Services Administration, and that is specifically targeted for people with disabilities becoming employed. CPRC is a Community Parent Resource Center. PTI is Parent Training and Information Center. That's a resource center that's federally funded and provides parents of students with disabilities a place to go for help navigating educational services. And the transition to adulthood comes under educational services, okay? Each state and territory of the United States has at least one PTI center. Families Helping Families of Greater New Orleans is the PTI for Louisiana. IFTW, you'll see written down sometimes, and that's Independent Futures That Work. That's a project of our Region B PTIs, the PTI centers that put together this series of webinars. OSERS, I've already mentioned, Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services. LRS is Louisiana Rehabilitation Services. That's the vocational rehab agency that supports Louisiana residents and students. And then pre-ETS, pre-ETS refers to pre-employment transition services. So I promise I'm not going to dwell on statistics, but let's look a little bit at some employment facts for people with disabilities. And this information comes from the U.S. Department of Labor's Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's the latest data that was available to me, and it's from 2022, so it's pretty current. First, rates of disability continue to increase due to our aging population and an increase in chronic health conditions. Research indicates that people with disabilities are less likely to be employed than those without disabilities. People with disabilities are more likely to work part-time than non-disabled workers, and they're more likely to work in service occupations, production, transportation, and material moving occupations. People with disabilities will likely encounter discriminatory hiring practices. It's a sad truth. Unfortunately, it is a truth. Some employers will assume that accommodating individuals living with a disability will be more costly to the business, but most of the time that's really not true. A lot of accommodations, like allowing for a flexible work schedule or modifying the layout of a workspace, doesn't cost anything. Other accommodations, like a screen reader software, or sit-to-stand desks, typically cost less than $500. Individuals with disabilities are less likely to graduate high school or to complete higher education or to obtain technical training as compared to those without disabilities. People with disabilities are often sheltered from risk and not afforded opportunities to explore careers and learning experiences. People with disabilities may lack the necessary skills, abilities, and other characteristics that are needed for available jobs. So if we build the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, and other characteristics of youth and young adults with disabilities, then we increase their ability to become employed. That's the goal. So let's talk about the challenges that someone with a disability might experience on the job. So find that chat box again. And if you're comfortable answering, tell us briefly some of the challenges that you or a loved one with a disability have experienced in the workplace. If you don't have personal experience, what are some challenges that you think they might possibly experience? And drop those in the chat box for me. It can be just a couple of words if you want. What are some challenges that you or a loved one with a disability have experienced or could experience in the workplace? Lack of appropriate proactive accommodations. Yeah, definitely. Communication. Communication is oftentimes a barrier for work. If the communication is different at all, even if it's someone who just struggles to speak, but they do speak, then sometimes that can be a barrier because people don't really have the patience anymore to try to understand. Let's see, lack of opportunities to obtain work experience, to be able to have it to get a job. I know so many places require experience, but you can't get the experience unless someone hires you. So it's like a really terrible catch-22. Not there yet, but I think he's going to struggle being accepted and having the knowledge to complete the work. So much of our jobs are really on-the-job training, and hopefully you'll be able to find sort of a natural support environment eventually for your young adults with disabilities who want to work so that they can learn a job and have people they can call on for assistance if they need it. I mean, none of us are completely independent on a job. I'm constantly calling on other people in my workplace for help with this and that. I don't personally get all of the information out to you about these webinars. I set up the webinars, I make sure I have the good PowerPoints that are presentable, and I do that leg, but I pass this on to somebody else to promote. So we all lean on each other in a workplace. See if I missed anybody. All right. So there are definitely barriers to work. And I think we all agree that there are a number of challenges, but let's call them speed bumps and not roadblocks for people with disabilities. Okay, we're just gonna badoom and go and keep going. All right. Self-doubt may keep individuals from pursuing new opportunities. And that happens sometimes even if you don't have a disability. Self-doubt can creep in. Oh, well, I don't have a degree, or I don't have any experience in this area, but I'm really good. I'm really good at this, but I don't have any work experience that says I do this. All kinds of self-doubt. Difficulty finding inclusive workplaces or a job that aligns to your strengths. It's another potential speed bump. Physical barriers could limit access in the work environment. Someone with a disability may encounter an environment that's not suited to their physical needs, like a building with inadequate wheelchair accessibility, or even an office space with too little space between desks or other furniture can be a problem. And again, those are things that are free to fix or very inexpensive to fix, but but are barriers. Inflexible work hours or policies about breaks can limit focus or not meet the physical or mental needs while on the job. Some people, just because of medical reasons, need to take breaks at certain times and that kind of thing. That can become a barrier. Attitudes of employers or coworkers can be discouraging. And then employers or coworkers might underestimate abilities or discriminate against the individual with a disability, even if they don't realize they're doing it. I think all of us at some point have been guilty of underestimating someone with a disability and trying to help too much before there is a need for them to be helped. I think we've all kind of done that. So why is employment important? I mean, why can't they just stay home and draw a disability and just do what they want to do? Well, there are benefits of having a job for everybody, but as also for someone with a disability. And those folks, as with pretty much everyone else, for them, employment provides greater economic self-sufficiency, an opportunity to use skills or develop new skills, to be more active in community life, improved self-esteem and self-affirmation, more social contact, and in turn less isolation are certainly good byproducts. Personal satisfaction with the job well done. And then just overall improved quality of life. Those things are all benefits of employment for adults with disabilities. And while there are a lot of benefits of working, there are certainly also advantages for employers to hire people with disabilities. And again, I said this in the little introduction, but you may get some good advocacy tips here, okay? And on the next slide as well is very good. People with disabilities can give insights into how to serve customers with disabilities, right? They provide a greater diversity at the work site so that a wide variety of perspectives are used when solving problems or doing the work that this particular company does. Employee retention rate is actually better when people with disabilities are on the job. A study conducted by the Institute for Corporate Productivity found that employees with developmental disabilities contributed to such tangible benefits as higher productivity, lower absenteeism, and increased customer loyalty. So those are um, some tangible benefits that employers can see when they hire people with disabilities. So here on this slide are 7 reasons for employers to hire people with disabilities. Again, you're going to get a copy of this PowerPoint, so don't feel like you need to write all these down, but they are good for you to tuck into your mind to use for advocacy. Um, Hiring people with disabilities improves the company's bottom line, and everybody wants to know what the bottom line is. It discovers the untapped potential of disabled workers. It reduces turnover because people with disabilities tend to seek stable and reliable work. They don't job hop because, they get a job that they like, that they enjoy, where they are accepted, and they stay with it. They are loyal. Um, it improves company morale and overall culture by encouraging empathy in the workplace and showing that the company values diversity. Hiring and promoting people with disabilities shows consumers with disabilities, as well as their families and friends, that they are valued, which may cause them to think more favorably on the company and encourage them to become or remain loyal customers. It qualifies the company for financial incentives, such as certain federal and state tax deductions and other financial incentives for the employer. And it helps the company meet federal contractor requirements by recruiting and retaining individuals with disabilities. So those aren't the things that are at the top of my list, but if you're trying to get a job and you have a disability, those are certainly some things I would bring out. So. Now, let's spend a little bit of time talking about some strategies that can help our youth and young adults to successfully prepare to get that employment piece working for them. First, youth with disabilities need opportunities to identify their strengths, explore their interests, learn their own preferences, and engage in valuable learning experiences prior to entering the workforce. And that comes from having a rich life and having people around them that encourage them to step out and be bold in making decisions and determining their own hopes and dreams. So that's very, very important. Second, providing a continuity of services past the age of majority, including accommodations and supports between educational and adult services, is essential. There's often it's almost like a cliff that students fall off of when they leave high school, and there is no continuity of services moving into adult life, and that's difficult. I have already experienced that as a parent, and it's hard. Number 3 on our list of strategies is to initiate career readiness learning opportunities at the start of kindergarten through graduation. It is never too early to start preparing any student to work. So let's think about, find that chat box again. I'm coming back to the chat. Let's think about practical things that you can do at home to start teaching basic job skills. Now, I don't mean a specific job, I mean just teaching work and responsibility. What are some ideas that you have about preparing your young person to one day go to work? Volunteer work. And some people frown on volunteer work, but it's a great way to get experience to add to a resume, believe it or not. Chores at home. That is my number one, is chores at home. Establish a routine. Absolutely. Learning how to send professional emails and making phone calls. That's great. That's a good one. It's a great idea. Helping out mom with chores around the house, and we have already helped at Second Harvest Food Bank. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Volunteer work is something that can be done by the whole family. So that's a way that you can get your young person to work with supervision and with encouragement, and with prompting from you. That's a great idea. So those are some excellent strategies of things that you can already be doing. And like I said, a child is never too young to learn work. My daughter at 10, I think I started her doing her own laundry. And my son has a disability. He's not able to do his own laundry, unfortunately. He does pick up his clothes after his bath. He picks up his clothes and goes puts them in his hamper. He picks up in his room, but that's autism. He kind of does that just because he doesn't leave anything out. But there are certain things that we require that he do according to his abilities. My daughter does not have a disability, and I had her starting her own laundry when she was 10. Taught her how to use the machine. She doesn't do her laundry when it's supposed to be done. She doesn't have a uniform for school. So, that I had her unloading the dishwasher pretty early. Now I've started building on that, reloading the dishwasher or washing up anything that doesn't go in the dishwasher that's still in the sink. So we're building on that. I'm trying to instill in her and my husband too, truth be known. But if you see something that needs doing, just do it. Just do it. Don't leave it for mom. Don't leave all the dishes sitting in the sink because mom will pick them up. If it needs doing, do it. It's just a responsible thing to do. So those are some ideas of things that we can do already to get our kids ready to go to work. So a fourth strategy to prepare young people for work is to start teaching career readiness skills that empower students to make informed career development decisions tied to their course selection. So in other words, look at their strengths and interests, their dreams. What do they want to do? What do they want to be when they grow up? What's their dream job? And then help them choose courses in high school that will benefit those career goals. And of course, that's going to tie into their IEP goals. So that will get them involved in their IEP, which brings us to strategy number 5. Ensure that your young person meaningfully participates in their IEP at any age. And then in high school, they will start transition planning. Be sure that they are actively involved and that they meaningfully participate in that process. Let them start being a part of the meetings early, and doing that helps them to be more self-determined and makes them a better self-advocate as they grow up. So it's just a great idea. And then number 6 on our list of strategies is to strengthen the capacity of educators to create evidence-based inclusive education and career readiness programs. These things are not rocket science. They can be done and on the cheap. Our special educators need to have the freedom and the authority to create programs that teach our kids work readiness skills. So my personal story is that when my son was in high school, and my son has significant disabilities, he's a non-speaker. He has some fine motor issues, following directions issues, those kinds of things. He's pretty significantly disabled. And so, when he was in high school, a couple of the teachers started a work readiness program, and they tapped 5 businesses in their community where they could take students to work on career skills. And this was a small community. This wasn't in a metropolitan area. It may be easier to do in a small community with fewer businesses where everybody knows everybody, but they tapped the library, they tapped the YMCA, they tapped the grocery store, which almost every community has one, or the dollar store, right? Just about everybody's got a Dollar General. The SPCA, their little animal shelter. And they also created a job in the school office. And one of the young ladies that enjoyed working in the school office ended up going to work there for the parish school board in that high school office after she graduated. She graduated with my son, and she works at the school office. So, giving our educators the freedom and the capacity to create career readiness programs is important. This was just 2 teachers that did this for our students, and what they did is I don't know how many weeks they changed, but for so many weeks they would do one business, and they would take the students to that one business once a week. The other days when they were in class, they were working on things that were related to that business and learning how to do skills that would apply to that business. So that's something that's very easy. I mean, it took a little bit of coordination, a little bit of getting folks, getting employers involved. But of course, employers aren't going to mind having volunteers from the high school come and work in their business, so it was a really good work readiness program. So think back to your first job. What was your first job? What skills did it require? How did you hear about it? Let's hear about some of those in the chat. What was your first job and what skills did it require? It's been a minute, but I'm trying to think back to my first job. I think my very first job was working at a little produce stand. It was like a produce grocery store in my town, and I was a cashier. And that was pretty big business as far as I was concerned. I made decent money and didn't have to flip burgers. Desk clerk at the college dorm, answering the phone and taking messages. Was that work study, Wallace? I worked at Wendy's customer service, being able to count money or skills that are needed for that. Yep. Worked on the support staff at a sleepaway summer camp. My crew was in charge of doing dishes after meals and washing the campers' laundry. God bless you, Claire. It required time management, physical strength and endurance, and a collaboration with other team members. Very good. And Wallace says it was work study, yeah. But that's great. That's great. Work skills. Boy, those camp jobs are not for those are not for the weak. That's some pretty intense work right there. But there are all kinds of jobs, Audubon Zoo hires people with disabilities for a lot of things. And, it may be something like um, that requires a low, more of a what I would consider to be like a lower skill set, but walking around picking up trash off the ground, those kinds of things, to helping some of the animal handlers even behind the scenes, cleaning up back there, doing those kinds of things. There's just all kinds of jobs that are available that um, don't require a lot of customer service interaction even. So, and it may be that you've got a chatterbox who is very social and customer service is where they're at, and that's beautiful as well. It just depends on their interests and their skills. So now that we've looked at strategies, let's go a little further with some tips on ways that you can prepare your student for a job. So I've got these on some sticky notes. Number one, promote lofty aspirations from childhood. Encourage their dreams. Talk about different careers of the people you know. Just encourage your kid to dream about their future. A lot of times, the first thing we ask kids, a lot of times that we meet a 4 or 5 year old, what do you want to be when you grow up? But for some reason, our kids with disabilities don't necessarily get asked that, and it's sad because they need to dream as well. The second one, pay attention to your child's learning style. That could have a big impact on the career that would be a good match. So, learning style. Another one, ensure that your young person understands their disability and the impact that that disability may have on their personal strengths as well as their limitations. So help them understand their disability. Assign daily and weekly chores at home, like we talked about earlier. Encourage and allow as much independence as possible with those jobs. Let them fail, let them flop. Let them learn in the way they need to learn to do those things. Give them praise for a job well done and give them some constructive feedback when they can improve on their performance. I know I do that with my daughter, and much to her dismay, because she only wants to hear that was great, but I'll say, well, you missed a spot over there, so it's important for kids with disabilities to hear those same things. Next, encourage volunteer experiences that fit with their hobbies or their interests in order to build some self-confidence and give them some exposure to potential future job opportunities. Also helps them build a resume, because even before they have job experience, if they've got volunteer experience, whether it was by themselves volunteer experience or if it was a family affair like at the Second Harvesters Food Bank or like at the SPCA, if you go and Go through donated newspapers at the animal shelter and stack them. That is a volunteer job, right? Walking the dogs is a volunteer job that the family can do if needed in order to get that young person with a disability some experience. Another thing, get your youth to advocate for the things that they need, like ordering delivery or a takeout meal, purchasing meals or movie tickets, scheduling doctor's appointments. They can start doing those things early, and now they can use technology to do a lot of that, and they don't even have to interact with anybody. They can do that with technology, but help them have them to do as much of these individual tasks as they can. And when you walk up to a fast food counter, have your child order their own meal. That they can start very early doing that. Another thing, encourage the development of independent living skills like planning and preparing meals, making their bed, doing the laundry, and that helps them to learn to follow steps and to become more responsible. And if you need to, you can even put next to the washer and dryer, put a checklist of an order of the way things need to be done, so that can serve as a cue. That's a simple accommodation that an employer could make if needed. You don't need to expect that your child is going to remember the order of every single thing that needs to be done if it's someplace that you can just put a little cheat sheet for them to go through. Even like when they're showering and stuff, you may already be doing that, making sure that everything gets clean and rinsed. So don't be afraid to use those. Encourage your young person to get a vocational evaluation, and that can be done through their high school or through LRS, the Louisiana Rehabilitation Services. That's our vocational rehab organization for Louisiana. Ensure that they are exposed to pre-ETS, pre-employment transition services from LRS, and be sure that those services are on the student's IEP when they start transition goals at 16 or even before. That that IEP that goes into place, that will be in place when your child turns 16, that IEP needs to have transition goals on it. Okay. And then the last one, set up job shadowing experiences with family members, friends, neighbors, even coworkers to expose them to different types of jobs and careers. Something that we do sometimes is as we're driving down the street, we'll see somebody working, and talk about what job that is, or, what skills would you need to do that job? What is it about this job that you think would be hard or easy? Is that something that you would like to do? So you can just do those kinds of things. Use those teachable moments that, when you see people doing different jobs. Now, families are key partners in this journey to employment for people with disabilities. Families should participate in meaningful training opportunities throughout the career and transition development process of their child. Families are important team members for this journey. Families should be provided career development training opportunities also to increase their capacity to assist the young person in navigating the career development process and to maximize their learning opportunities. It's important for families to have some training. Families who understand the career development process are just better prepared to support their child in the transition planning for a career. And families who understand career development are better prepared to support their youth to access adult education and support. Sometimes a kid gets out of high school, they want to either go through a training program and get a certificate in a certain thing, or they may want to go through like a career, a vocational training program, like to become an electrician or a plumber, a carpenter, those kinds of things. That's a shorter program. It doesn't require an actual degree. It's a training program. Those are adult education opportunities that your young person may be interested in that don't require college. Or they may do college and get an associate's degree in something or get a certificate like we have Delgado here in New Orleans, get a certificate, or go to college and get a degree if that's what they want. The end thing, though, is to get a job with whatever training and education they want to take. It needs to be pointing toward getting meaningful employment where they can make a living wage. So just to kind of lay out the bottom line, sort of recap here some of the things we've talked about. The word transition means preparing for. That's all. Your child's transition planning just means preparing for life after high school, and it needs to start early. Families are the experts regarding their youth with disabilities. So your input into transition planning is vital to creating a well-rounded, balanced plan that meets the need of your young person. Families have provided and will continue to provide long-term support for their young people and individuals with disabilities. According to the NEA, the National Education Association, studies have found that a child's educational experience is enhanced when a parental figure is involved in their education. Family members need to have high expectations that build on the student's strengths, their preferences, and their interests, and that foster their ability to achieve independence and self-sufficiency to the greatest extent possible. Family involvement in transition planning is important because they help the young person to complete a lot of transition-related activities and learn about the questions to ask um, when looking at employment options and post-secondary agencies and services. Parents can use their own network of contacts for experience opportunities, for people to be mentors or for job leads and other support. So those things are all important. Here are some of the resources that you'll have. The disability employment facts that I talked about at the beginning, I've linked some of that stuff here in case it's something that you want to look up later. Reasons to hire people with disabilities. These are more tips, uh, better known as your tools for employment advocacy. Okay, so those are your tips. Some other resources, just miscellaneous things. The Independent Futures That Work project aims to ensure that people with disabilities and their families have the skills and knowledge necessary to effectively advocate for vocational, independent living, and other rehabilitation services. This link is to their website, and you'll find a lot of tools and resources. Our website at Families Helping Families of Greater New Orleans also has a pretty good number of employment resources and tools, so be sure to check that out as well. So this page of resources is very important. I'd love for you to click on that and go through some of those when you get your PowerPoint later. If you have any questions or need support on anything related to special education or transition planning or adult employment for people with disabilities, please get in contact with us. I have dropped the link to the little evaluation survey, our little feedback survey. That's in the chat box now. If you wouldn't mind just clicking on that for me and getting started on that. And we can take questions. I don't think you will be able to open your mic because with using the webinar format, I haven't quite figured out how to open mics yet. If you know how to do that and you would like to put that in the chat box, that would be awesome. But anyway, you can put your questions in the chat box if you don't mind. Wallace has also added a link, Louisiana Alliance of Post-Secondary Inclusive Education, and that's the Facebook page. Thank you, Wallace, for adding that. Wallace is from Families Helping Families of Southwest Louisiana. So thank you so much, Wallace. You guys aren't seeing. Oh, hold on a second. Thank you for telling me. I wasn't clicked on everyone. I was just clicked on panelists. Sorry about that. So now you should be able to see the link to the little survey. If you need a certificate of attendance for today, you can request it in that survey. The link is now in the chat box. Thanks for letting me know. So if you have questions, though, that you don't want to pose in a public forum, My contact information is on this slide. You can feel free to reach out to me. If it's sort of above my pay grade and I can't really help you, I will certainly pass you along to someone in our office who can help. Okay. But for now, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'll be quiet for a moment and let you do that. I forgot to grab all the links to the other 3 of this 4-part series. The next one, though, part 2, is going to be on Tuesday, also at 10 a.m. And that's going to be about key laws that support youth and career readiness. So on Tuesday, we're going to talk about the laws that benefit and protect people with disabilities who want to work. Okay, very important stuff for you guys to know. If there are no questions, oh, how do I get in contact with someone at LRS? Wallace, if you would like to drop a link for me to LRS in the chat box, I would appreciate that. And I will also put that in the email that I send. Okay. LRS link. Surprise. There it is. The link to LRS is now in the chat box. I thought I had that in here somewhere, but huh, look at there. I can't believe I didn't put that in there. I'll add that to the slides for next time so I don't overlook that. And he also added a link for the LRS regional offices. So those things are in the chat for you. Thanks, Wallace, for doing that. I appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. All right, folks. Well, when you're done with your little feedback survey, you are free to go. And I hope that we'll see you next time. Y'all take care. Have a good day.